What is a good way to start the conversation with a family who might be avoiding the topic of death? This is a favorite thing that I do on hospice, I guess, or something I'm often called upon to do as spiritual counselor, because there are many families, believe it or not, on hospice there are people who still are avoiding the topic of death. So the best way to me is to just spit out a question, to ask that question that will gently bring the topic to the forefront. And it could be something like, have you been thinking about what it might be like to go to the next realm or to be in heaven? What do you think it might be like in heaven? Or do you think you might get to meet so-and-so, or do you think you might get to meet your parents or your friends who are deceased on the other side? And somehow gear the topic toward the other side and the inevitable that's coming up for this person. And often I think the family members are trying to protect the loved one from talking about something that in reality they may be dying to talk about, no pun intended. But really, many people who are getting ready to die would love to have someone they could talk with and really converse about on this topic. I'll never forget one time I was with a woman whose whose daughter-in-law had come to live with her for the end of her days. And the two of them had not yet opened up the conversation between the two of them. Well, one day when I visited, I started a conversation with the mother-in-law, and she began to tell me about some mystical things that had happened when her husband had died, after her husband had died. And so I began to realize that she was more than willing and open to talking about death and what this might be like, especially afterwards, after she died. So then I realized that on my way out the door that the daughter-in-law had been reading a beautiful book called Final Gifts. There are some of the stories from Final Gifts are in my book, but this is a collection of stories by nurses who have done hospice work. And so when I realized she was reading this book, I suggested that she might share some of these stories with her mother-in-law. And so I kind of became this bridge person for the two who had not been talking about death to begin to share that conversation. And sure enough, as I recall, I never had another conversation with that woman. I guess she was ready and she took off within a few weeks of our visit.